Hi witches, welcome back to Witchcraft 101. Today we're going to be talking about the Wheel of the Year. So I know we talked about Litha a little bit earlier, but I wanted to kind of circle back, haha, no pun intended, to the Wheel of the Year and really just like go through and summarize what each holiday is about. So hopefully this can kind of give you a good intro to the Wheel of the Year. I recommend, of course, as always, going back and like looking further into like the history and some of the other ways to celebrate, because again, my way to practice is not the only way to practice. I actually really do like the Llewellyn series about the Wheel of the Year. I do want to like point out that it is kind of written from a Wiccan point of view and does mention like the Lord and the Lady and has some kind of Wiccan themes to it. So I do like it for what it is, and I do recommend reading it if you are interested in looking at that perspective of the Wheel of the Year. But hopefully this is like a good intro, and hopefully this piques your interest in this beautiful system of holidays that many Wiccans and other pagans do kind of celebrate. So the Wheel of the Year is a series of 8 holidays that are spaced out equidistantly throughout the entirety of the year. So there is historical evidence of some of these holidays being actually celebrated like back in the ancient times. However, the modern celebrations that, you know, witches like myself practice today are a little bit different than what would have happened maybe a couple thousand years ago. So I think that's pretty safe to assume. I just think it's so neat to see some of the historical basis and the historical basis of these practices that have like lived on throughout the years. I think it's just absolutely fascinating and beautiful. So without further ado, let's start talking about the holidays on the Wheel of the Year. The first holiday that I want to talk about is the Witch's New Year, Samhain. So this is celebrated on the 31st of October in the Northern Hemisphere, but if you are living in the Southern Hemisphere, you're going to celebrate it either on April 30th or May 1st, or kind of in between, right? So again, it is kind of the ending of the harvest season, and it is seen as a time to begin your rest and your preparation for the following growing season in the spring. So there is actual physical evidence of celebration of Samhain in ancient times. And many of these kind of practices kind of grew up into the Halloween that I certainly know and love today. So they are different, but during this time, a lot of witches believe that the veil is thin and the dead can walk more freely in between worlds. So it is really traditional to participate in ancestor work, to visit graveyards, to perform divination, and kind of more freely speak into the universe, and speak your intention into the universe. And it's also a really good time to kind of mourn those we have lost, as well as to begin your cycle of rest again for the new year ahead. So I think this holiday really gives us a great time to pause, to rest and reflect before moving forward. And I really love this holiday for what it is, not just the spooky things, but also some of the themes behind it. So yeah, but moving forward, the next holiday in the new Witch's New Year, at least, is Yule, which is a celebration of the winter solstice. So this is usually celebrated in the Northern Hemisphere between the 20th and 25th of December. And if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, it is usually anytime between June 20th and June 25th, I would say. So some witches do choose to practice and celebrate Yule over a series of days like that. I honestly usually only have the energy to dedicate like one day to it, so I really pick the shortest day of the year, like in terms of like actual astronomy. So it's usually around the 21st for me. It's really kind of a holiday that is a time to celebrate and a time to like draw close to your loved ones in the depths of winter. It is also a celebration of the return of the sun to the world. So the days from here on out are only getting longer. Witches and Wiccans may follow the narrative of the Oak King and the Holly King. So at this point in the year, the Oak King actually triumphs over the Holly King and begins his journey or his quest to bring life and light back into the world. So that's kind of how Wiccans might explain the lengthening of the days, if that makes sense. Every year around Yule, there's always kind of this debate about like Christians stealing Christmas from the pagans, and like while a lot of Christian traditions were like pagan traditions that were syncretized into Christianity in order to make Christianity more palatable to pagans, so that they would convert to be Christians and then thus their souls would be saved, or whatever. I just want to remind people that the story of Jesus and like Christmas itself is not necessarily stolen. Like that is its own religion. Like that's its own thing. And the same thing goes for Astara as well. A lot of things have been syncretized, but it's not necessarily a stolen like holiday or religion or anything like that. So with that out of the way, let's move forward into the next holiday on the Wheel of the Year, which is Imbolc. So in the Northern Hemisphere, this is celebrated between the 1st or maybe the 2nd of February. And in the Southern Hemisphere, it's usually the 1st or maybe the 2nd of August. Now this is the halfway point between winter and spring. So it's really a celebration again of like light coming back to the world, and that the fact that spring is actually like kind of on our doorstep, even though it may not feel like it. It's a time that is really dedicated to purification and to cleansing. I tend to start my spring cleaning process around Imbolc, which I know sounds a little bit weird because it's in February, but trust me, it helps. It's also a time where some witches or pagans, or Wiccans, excuse me, might like take time to actually dedicate themselves to their practice, or maybe be initiated into a coven. So it's kind of traditional in some sects of Wicca. More notably, this holiday is centered around the celebration of the Celtic goddess Brigid. So she is kind of this goddess of like craftsmanship as well as like poetry. She's also very much associated with fire. So fire is an element that features very prominently in this holiday. So candle magic is absolutely encouraged. It's a holiday in which we are kind of reigniting our inner fires. We have taken that time to rest through Sawin, through Yule, and now we're kind of starting to get ourselves back up, moving and grooving, getting ready for the year ahead. So again, it's really all about starting to kind of clear things out. This is actually a holiday that I have already talked about this year, and if you want to learn a little bit more about it, definitely go check out my video from February. So I talked a little bit more in depth about some of the background and some of the correspondences and stuff like that. The next holiday that we're going to talk about is Astara. So again, I have a video about this as well if you want to learn more. But Astara is usually celebrated anywhere between the 20th and the 23rd of March, or the 20th and the 23rd of September if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, 23rd of March, or 20th through 23rd of March in the Northern Hemisphere. It is a celebration of the spring equinox. So spring is officially here, and day and night are in perfect balance. So they are equal. During this holiday, we recognize that it is time to start sowing the first seeds in our garden. A lot of people start their seeds during Astara, at least indoors until it's warm enough to go outside, because I know certainly where I live, it is not warm enough to plant anything outside in March. Or if you're not necessarily a green witch or really into gardening, this might be the time that you're really starting to focus on and solidify your intentions or your goals for the year ahead. So really starting to sow those first seeds of intention, putting that energy out there for the first time. At this point, we're seeing those first signs of life returning back to the planet that we see in spring. Oh my gosh, amazing. Moving forward, we have another one of my favorite holidays, which is Beltane. Now, this is celebrated usually in the Northern Hemisphere between the 30th of April and the 1st of May, or in the Southern Hemisphere, it is celebrated on October 31st. So Beltane, or May Day, is kind of like this really beautiful, fiery fertility festival. So again, a really big emphasis on the element of fire. It really celebrates kind of this idea of the May Queen, or this kind of like maiden figure with like flowers in their hair. You might see people, dancing a maypole, but again, it's also about kind of fertility and sexuality, and coming together of lovers, let's say, right? So there is a really big emphasis again on like fertility, abundance, prosperity, luck. It's a day when the veil is thin between our world and the world of the Fae. So the Fae are starting to return back to celebrate the abundance of the planet with us during the entire summer. And it's also a day that is really common for pagan weddings and hand fastings due to its association with love, and kind of marriage. Some people might get engaged perhaps on the 1st of May instead of getting married, but it's really a celebration of love and partnership, or self-love. So there's that as well. So the next holiday that we are talking about is actually coming up for me at the time of filming, and that is Litha. So in the Northern Hemisphere, that is celebrated between the 20th and the 22nd of June, and in the Southern Hemisphere around like the 20th to 22nd of December. So this is again a celebration of the summer solstice. It's the longest day of the year. It's a day of abundance, joy, power, again, celebration, manifestation, expansion, growth, just all of those good vibes, right? It's such a good holiday. It's very like sunny and sunshiny. I just love it. The Fae are really kind of at the height of their activity or the height of their power at this point in our realm. And you might find yourself enjoying some of the bounties of summer, enjoying the good weather, enjoying some of those amazing fruits and vegetables that you are growing in your garden, perhaps. Litha is also a time that is traditional for pagans to get married, so if you're not interested in doing it on Beltane, you can absolutely get married on Litha, or at any time, but those are kind of some traditional dates. And at this point in time, again, if you're following that narrative of the Oak King and the Holly King, this is kind of when the Oak King is at the height of his power and the Holly King is about to kind of take over as we head towards the darker half of the year. So even though it is really the celebration of love and light and life and all of this really good stuff, like good vibes everywhere, it's also good to pause and remind yourself, like, hey, like, enjoy this and like be grateful and like, yes, absolutely live your life to its fullest and enjoy this holiday and the celebration to its fullest, but also as a reminder that, you know, the darker half of the year is coming and we need to start to prepare ourselves. I know that for me personally, like in the winter time and like, well, the fall and winter time, like my mental health isn't as great as it might be during the summer. So it's also kind of a good reminder that, you know, I need to make sure that I'm still keeping my healthy habits in place to make sure that I have as successful of a winter that I can with the supports that I do have. So just as like a reminder not to be a downer, because I do really love Litha, but it is also something that is good to just like remind yourself of as we journey through the Wheel of the Year. Okay, so we are nearly done. We are most of the way through. The second to last holiday that we have on the Wheel of the Year is Lunasa, or sometimes Lammas. So both names are used interchangeably. This holiday is celebrated on August 1st in the Northern Hemisphere and February 1st in the Southern Hemisphere. It is the first of 3 harvest festivals that we have on the Wheel of the Year, those being Lunasa, so this one, Mavon, the next one, and then Sawin, which is the first one that we talked about, the final harvest festival. It is a holiday that marks the exact middle between summer and fall. So this is really like a holiday that's celebrated definitely like around back to school time. I would see all like the folders and the binders out at like Target and stuff and just really kind of get like geared up for fall. I don't know if that makes any sense. And sometimes like I still get nostalgic about that. Like sometimes I'll be like, I want a color-coded folder. But that's probably just because I'm a Virgo. Anyways, I have a lot of nostalgia around this holiday, and it's just like, I don't know, it makes me really feel like this holiday really like calls me to return home and to the hearth and really start to kind of prepare for the winter ahead. So it's again very nostalgic for me. This first harvest is the grain harvest traditionally. So there's a really large importance on the baking of bread and in general kitchen magic. So again, no pagan holiday is complete without a feast. This one definitely is no different. There's also a lot of importance around the Celtic god Lu, who is a warrior, a craftsman, and a king. So his mythology is very vast and very interesting, very rich. So if you're into mythology, definitely a figure to look into if that is something that sounds interesting to you. And again, it's kind of our beginning of saying goodbye to summer and looking back at all of the great memories that we made, and preparation for the fall as the energy of the planet is waning. Finally, the last holiday on the Wheel of the Year before we begin again with Samhain is Mavon, and this is my favorite holiday, of course, because it actually happens on my birthday. So this usually happens anywhere between the 20th and the 23rd of September. My birthday is September 20th, or the 20th to 23rd of March in the Southern Hemisphere. So again, it's like usually like either on my birthday or like the day after my birthday, and I love Mavon. This is sometimes called like Witch Thanksgiving because it is all about feasting and community and coming together, which I think is something that I'm very much like about as well. So maybe that's like why I like it so much. But it's also a celebration of the autumn equinox. So fall is actually here. I do think it was really cool that I was born on like this day where we transitioned from summer into fall. There's something kind of magical about that to me. But it really is kind of like this holiday that celebrates the biggest harvest of the year. And again, is kind of time to turn inward and turn to each other for comfort as the weather starts to get colder. And really ultimately is a time to find balance and to begin to kind of power down and embrace those restful energies of fall and winter. So it's really that kind of time to start to get cozy and start to settle in and hunker down for the winter. So I think it's just a really lovely, cozy holiday, and it's all centered around food, and I love to eat. So that is my little rundown of the Wheel of the Year. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me. I know that was a lot. I do have some videos up from either last year or more recently this year if you are interested in learning more about some of the holidays that we have already experienced. If you want to review or like go a little bit more in depth, I do have those up already, so feel free to check them out. And otherwise, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!